This breaking news is from Saudi Arabia, and the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh has come under attack as Tehran keeps up its retaliation campaign in the Gulf over U.S. and Israeli strikes. Saudi Arabia has condemned the Iranian attack on the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh. The Saudi Foreign Ministry in a statement expressed that its strongest condemnation and rejection of the heinous attack that targeted the U.S. Embassy building in Riyadh, describing it as cowardly and unjustified. Yesterday, smoke was seen rising in the vicinity of the U.S. Embassy compound in Kuwait after Iran and Iranian-backed militias targeted Israel and Arab states with missile attacks. This is the latest coming in from West Asia. And according to Saudi Arabia, the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh has come under attack as Tehran keeps up its retaliation campaign in the Gulf over U.S. and Israeli strikes. Saudi Arabia has condemned the Iranian attack on the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh. The Saudi Foreign Ministry in a statement expressed that its strongest condemnation and rejection of the heinous attack that targeted the U.S. Embassy building in Riyadh, describing it as cowardly and unjustified. Yesterday, smoke was seen rising in the vicinity of the U.S. Embassy compound in Kuwait after Iran and Iranian-backed militias targeted Israel and Arab states with missile attacks. Let's talk to our correspondent, Dharamjot Kaur. She is in the newsroom. Dharamjot Kaur, what's the latest on your end? We do understand that the retaliation and the counterattacks are still ongoing in the Gulf states.
Well, you're absolutely right, Eric. It doesn't look like this entire war is going to end anytime soon. As the visuals showed, there was smoke that was seen emanating from the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh. We've also heard of U.S. officials telling their non-emergency staff in West Asia to leave as and when it is possible for them to leave the countries surrounding the region as Iran continues its retaliatory strikes after being struck by US and Israel. Now, we also know that it was true drones that had hit the US Embassy in Riyadh, and we've heard condemnation, as you rightly mentioned, from the Saudi Kingdom. There's also news coming in that these retaliatory strikes, when they were carried out, there was nobody inside the building, so there has been no harm to human life as such, though there has been infrastructural damage. Also because this attack was carried out in the early hours of the morning, which is why there were no civilian casualties. So that's what we know so far with respect to this particular strike. And it is coming a day after the oil facility in Saudi, the Aramco facility, was struck by the Iranians. So clearly a lot of escalation that is being seen. There is a retaliation that may be expected from the American and Israeli side as these strikes continue. Whether or not this goes on for days or for weeks, or is it going to turn out to be another endless war? This is something that we will find out in a few days from now, Eric.
Well, Dharamjot Kaur, yesterday the President of the United States did say that he expects this war to go on for at least 4 to 5 weeks. He also did say that he will not get bored by this war, so that doesn't really have an indication as to what the U.S. President has in store for the region or has in store for Iran. But we do understand that Israel is continuing with its campaign right at the heart of Tehran and Lebanon.
Absolutely. In fact, there's also news coming in from Lebanon, as you rightly mentioned, where the Lebanon army has redeployed some of its personnel on the southern side of their border after Israeli attacks have increased in the region. Again, whether or not this is going to turn into a full-scale ground invasion or a full-throttle aerial attack, those are details that are still awaited. We're hearing a lot of contradictory statements coming both from the Israeli and the American sides with respect to what their entire plan of action is. Sometimes there are statements coming from the Israeli defense minister saying that they do not plan a full-scale ground invasion or an attack, and then there are other contradictory statements coming with respect to what their entire plan of action is with Lebanon or with respect to Iran also. We also know that the Hezbollah is getting active in Lebanon as we speak. How that pans out with respect to their entire clash with also the Lebanese political front and the Lebanese army, is there going to be some sort sort of an internal tussle when it comes to the retaliation coming from within Lebanon as Israel attacks intensify on the country. That is also a development that we're waiting to see. But as you rightly mentioned, Eric, there's not a very clear statement with respect to what the American plan of action is, especially from what we've heard from the US president so far. 4 to 5 weeks, few days, there is really no clarity in terms of how long this will go on for, particularly because there is no clarity on what their exact goal is. And if we could just zoom out a little bit here, Eric, this is a conversation that has changed. From regime change, it has now become about regime adjustment and about Trump wanting to get back to the table and talks. So what really is the true goal here of US and Israel with respect to Iran? That is something that there is still a lot of uncertainty about.
Well, talking about talks and talking about negotiations, there are people and there are nations, including the European Union, who are urging for diplomacy and who are urging for de-escalation. But according to Ali Larijani, who's the chief of the council in Iran, he says that they have no window, they will not resume talks with the United States because the United States has chose Israel as first policy for themselves, so they think that the negotiations will be in limbo. In that front, have you had anything as to what the delegation from Iran, the United States, and even Israel had to say?
Well, in terms of delegation talks, there isn't a lot of information coming on in terms of when and how the talks are going to happen, because the clear contestation now from the Iranian side is that when the talks were going on, US and Israel carried out a joint strike on them. And so that has, from the Iranian perspective, closed down the window for any sort of negotiations to take place. However, with increasing global calls for de-escalation, with how the impact is spilling over to the entire world with respect to crude prices going up, with respect to volatility affecting markets, whether or not America and Iran come to the table along with Israel to carry the conversation forward is going to be definitely watched out by everybody, because there is a global spillover of this entire conflict that has begun only 4 days ago, Eric.
Well, Dharamjot, the focus on the flashpoint right now is US embassies across the region, because it started in Pakistan, now it went to Kuwait, and now it is in Saudi Arabia, because Iran did indicate that they're going to target US military bases in these regions, but I think the focus has now changed.
Well, it's not just about military bases anymore. It's about where Iran can hurt US the most. And the definition of that has clearly expanded from military sites all the way to embassies, to any other infrastructure that they believe, or they say that the Iranian side claims there are American personnel present. That was the news and the reports that we heard a few days back when big hotels had come under attack in Dubai and then in Abu Dhabi. And so all of these areas where Iran claims, and they say they know there are American personnel or American interests present, that is open to attack from their front. How much this expands further, of course, is a matter of concern, because we've also seen the Aramco facility come under attack yesterday. And so from that, it's gone further to the embassies coming under attack, drone attacks or otherwise. So clearly, the definition of retaliation for Iran has expanded to hurt America as much as it can, whether it's through personnel or through their military facilities or through embassies and even countries that are currently standing with the American side. So how much this further escalates is going to be a cause of concern for everyone across the world, Eric.
Well, I think let's return to the issue of Lebanon and Syria, because we do understand that at least 30,000 people have been displaced and they're taking shelters across Lebanon. And we also have information that people are fleeing from Syria, the border that, the area that borders Israel in Syria, because people are fearing that some of the missiles that are crossing over to Lebanon may fall in Syria. That is a new flashpoint in this war, Dharamjot.
Well, you're right, Eric, and we've seen this happen before as well. We saw this happen when Israel was striking Gaza over the past 2 years. We saw Hezbollah get involved in that, and a year-long conflict between Lebanon and Israel emerged as a result of that before the ceasefire in November 2024. But again, after that, we saw a lot of intermittent strikes being carried out by Israel on what they said were Hezbollah installations. On the other hand, we heard of Hezbollah not wanting to disarm completely, and the Lebanese military and the Lebanese political structure in the middle of this entire flashpoint. Now, with the strikes that have been carried out by US and Israel on Iran, we're looking at the Hezbollah front open up again. We're looking at Israel formulating plans of carrying out again preemptive strikes, preemptive attacks on Lebanon, especially the southern part of the national borders of the country that it shares with Israel. And so clearly there's an escalation on this front that really mirrors a lot of what happened after 7th of October 2023 as well. So again, the question here is, will US intervene on this front and try to bring a halt to that this conflict to avoid another war front opening up completely? That's going to be a big question. Another big question is going to be in terms of what Hezbollah really does now. Is it going to re-involve itself the way it did 2 years ago? Or is there going to be a level of containment in terms of what it can do? Because of a lot of its leadership and its weapons, its arsenal has been destroyed in the past. So there is a lot of uncertainty with respect to which way this can go. But again, the key concern is this Israel-Lebanon the conflict should not turn into a full-blown war and open up another front like it did 2 years ago. So a lot is happening. There are civilian casualties that are emerging. The numbers are going up, and worryingly so, on the Lebanese front as well. Key question now is, can this stop before it's too late, Eric?
Well, just to add to what Dharamjot Kaur is talking about, and this concerns Hezbollah, a senior Hezbollah official says the recent attacks have left the group with no option but to return to resistance. Israel wanted open war, so let it be an open war. This is according to Mahmoud Kimati. He's a senior Hezbollah official. Dharamjot Kaur will have to leave it there. Thank you.